The story of John the Baptist's execution prefigures the story of Jesus' execution. Both stories exemplify how the world received God's messenger. Exhibit A is composed of the prophets of Israel. Nobody likes prophets. Kings didn't like prophets. Ahab rejected Elijah in 1 Kings. It was typical. The kings were always doing wicked things. Consequently, prophets automatically brought them the bad news. People didn't like prophets either. If you just read Jeremiah chapter 37 and 38, will give you your evidence you need that they just didn't like prophets. It's clear. To be a prophet is to meet opposition. We need to know that living a life for Jesus Christ is risky business. The road is sometimes no smoother for us than it was for Jesus. Reading the story today in the Gospel of Mark, John's execution is like reading the morning newspaper. The characters are just like people we know. They represent the cold, hard world. There are three conspirators. The first is King Herod, ruler of Jerusalem. As a typical king, he is arrogant and immoral. Whatever he wants, he takes, including Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Let's not work up sympathy for Herodias. She willingly leaves Philip for Herod. As the story unfolds, the wickedness only multiplies. When John denounced her sins in marrying Herod, she resorts to killing him, making her the second conspirator. She's happy to use her daughter, her husband, as well as murder to get what she wants. The third character is the royal daughter. Biblical manuscripts are unclear about her name. Josephus, to some historians, they say Salome. We're not told what kind of dance Salome danced, but speculation had abound. Well, it abounds in art, in music, in literature, and even the cinema have portrayed Salome as, well, the girl from hell as she danced the seven veils. So, there you have it, three characters who are going to determine the fate of God's messenger. How would you like to have your fate in their hands? They're present in the world, represent the way, the world of power and sin. And anyone who gets in their way is expendable. Herod is one who actually had the power to execute. Here, where we really see the parallel between John's death and Jesus' death. Both John and Jesus were condemned by a person of authority. Herod for John and Pilate for Jesus' case. Neither authority, they actually didn't want to kill God's messenger. In fact, both had respect and even feared the messenger. But both rulers were wicked, and they were weaklings. They get pushed into it. Both feared others more than they feared God. Rulers are usually willing to sacrifice people in order to maintain their power. You think that's out there in our world today? Oh yeah, big time, huh? We see it in local, national areas of our lives. Mark makes an important statement by the context in which it's placed in his story. He sandwiches it in between Jesus sending out of the disciples to preach in Mark 6 through 13. Their subsequent return in Mark 6:30. He's showing how the world receives God's messenger. Since you and I, as Christians, are messengered by definition, we better pay attention. We didn't know you were a messenger, did you? We all are. We all are. Nothing can separate us messenger from evil rulers. In fact, evil will track us down, even in the most sacred places. Archbishop Thomas Beck, December 29, 1170, in England. Archbishop Oscar Romana, March 24, 1980, in El Salvador. They were murdered in their own sanctuary for opposing the rulers. Similar stories abound all through history and in the present. We must never suppose that the world will automatically congratulate us for telling the truth and doing the right thing. God's messengers are always up against the indifference and evil of self-centering people. Now, the good news, even in face of grim reality like these, there's always reason to rejoice. The world can nail down God's messenger, but at the end, the nails won't hold. God always has the last word. And when the world is busy being the world, God is busy being God. And for that we can say, praise be to God. There's a story. It's about a man named George Thomas, a pastor in a small New England town. One Easter morning, he came to the church carrying a rusty, bent, old bird cage, and he set it on the pulpit. And of course, eyebrows were raised, and they were wondering, why did he bring that old rusty bird cage into the sanctuary? And then he said, I was walking through town yesterday, and I saw a young man coming toward me, swinging this bird cage. On the bottom of the cage were 3 small wild birds, shivering with cold and fright. I stopped the lad and asked, "What you got there, son?" "Just some old birds," the young boy replied. "What are you going to do with them?" the pastor asked. "I'm taking them home and have some fun with them," he answered. "I'm going to tease them. I'm going to pull on their feathers and frighten them. I'm going to have a real good time. But when you get tired of these birds, sooner or later, what will you do? The pastor asked. Oh, I got some cats, said the little boy. My cats like birds, and I'll give them to them. Pastor was silent for a moment. How much do you want for those birds, son? Huh? Why do you want these birds, mister? They're just plain old field birds. They don't sing, they aren't very pretty. How much do you want? The pastor asked. Well, the boys sized up the pastor and thought he was crazy, but he said, $10. Pastor reached in his pocket, took out a $10 bill, placed it in the boy's hand, and in a flash, the boy was gone. The pastor picked up the cage and gently carried him to the end of an alley where there were some trees and grass growing. Set the cage down, opened the door, and tapped just a little on the bars, and the birds went out and were set free. Well, that explains the empty cage on the pulpit. And then the pastor began to tell his story. One day, Satan and Jesus were having a conversation. Satan had just come from the Garden of Eden, and he was boasting and gloating. Yes, sir, I just caught me a world full of people down there, set a trap for them, used the bait, and I knew they couldn't resist, and I got them all. Got them all. What are you going to do with them? Jesus asked. Satan replied, oh, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to teach them how to marry and divorce each other, how to hate, how to abuse each other, how to drink, lie, smoke, and curse. I'm going to teach them how to invent guns and bombs and kill each other. I'm going to have a lot of fun. And what will you do when you get done with them? Jesus asked. Oh, I'm going to kill them, Satan said very proudly. How much do you want for them? Jesus asked. Oh, you don't want these people. They're no good. Why, they'll just take you and they'll hate you and they'll spit on you, curse you, and they'll kill you. You don't want these people. How much? Jesus asked. Satan looked at Jesus and sneered and said, all your blood, tears, and your life. And Jesus said, done. Then he paid the price. The pastor picked up the cage, opened the door, and he walked from the pulpit. Isn't it funny how simple it is for people to trash God and then wonder why the world's going to hell? Isn't it funny how someone can say, I believe in God, but still follow Satan, who, by the way, also believes in God? In the life of disciples and us, moments occur when we must stand for the truth of Christ against adversaries of God and God's people. God will vindicate those who stand for the truth. and he will stand with you because he loves us. Amen. Let us turn our hymnals